Hey everyone, it's Sophia. I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. You know, sometimes the simplest things can bring so much joy, and today was definitely one of those days. I spent the whole day just blissfully lost in music. I made a new playlist, and honestly, it felt like magic. I carefully curated every song, blending genres and moods until it felt just right, like a perfect cup of tea on a rainy afternoon. And then, I just let the music wash over me. I swayed, I hummed along, and for a few precious hours, the world outside faded away. Everything felt calm, serene, almost weightless. You know those moments when you feel completely at peace? That's exactly how it was. It was such a soothing experience, a gentle balm for the soul. It's funny how music can do that, isn't it? Transport you to another place, another feeling. And you know what? I wanted to share that feeling with you. So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together. New videos are released daily, focusing on English speaking and listening skills to help you improve and enjoy your learning journey. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you just get this itch? This itch to try something completely new, something you'd normally never even consider? Well, that itch found me a few months ago, and it came in the form of rock climbing. Rock climbing. I trip over air. I'm more of a curl up with a good book kind of person than a scale a sheer cliff face kind of person. But there it was, this insistent little voice whispering, you gotta try it. Just once. It started subtly, with an Instagram reel of someone gracefully ascending a brightly colored wall. Then a friend casually mentioned their climbing gym membership. Before I knew it, I was Googling rock climbing for absolute beginners. See, I'm a sucker for a challenge, even if it's a challenge against my own inherent clumsiness. So, I roped in, pun intended, my best friend, Sarah. Sarah is fearless. She's the type who'll jump out of a plane without a second thought. I figured her courage might osmosis its way into me. We picked a Sunday afternoon, a brightly lit, slightly intimidating climbing gym nestled in a converted warehouse. Walking in, the air was thick with chalk dust and the low hum of exertion. The walls, towering above, were a riot of colorful holds, like giant, plastic, geometric barnacles. Ropes snaked everywhere, a dizzying network against the exposed brick. The smell, a mix of rubber, sweat, and something vaguely metallic, was unique. Let's just say it wasn't the lavender and chamomile I was used to. We signed waivers. Always a comforting start to any new adventure, right? And got a quick rundown from a ridiculously toned instructor with biceps the size of my head. He showed us how to tie the figure 8 knot, crucial for not plummeting to your doom, and how to belay, which is basically being your climbing partner's human brake. It looked easy enough when he did it, all smooth and effortless. When I tried, it felt like wrestling a particularly stubborn octopus. Don't worry, the instructor chuckled, patiently entangling my knotted mess. It takes practice. Yeah, practice I clearly didn't have. We started on the easiest wall, the one designed for toddlers and terrified adults like me. The holds were huge, practically begging to be grabbed. Even I couldn't mess this up, right? Wrong. My first attempt was pathetic. My arms, used to typing on a keyboard, not hauling my entire body weight vertically, screamed in protest. My feet scrabbled for purchase, slipping on the chalky surface. I felt like a newborn giraffe, all legs and awkwardness. Sarah, on the other hand, was practically sprinting up the wall. Come on, slowpoke, she called down, already halfway to the top. Easy for her to say. She has the upper body strength of a small gorilla. I finally managed to drag myself a few feet off the ground, my heart hammering against my ribs. The view from up there, well, it was about 5 feet higher than the ground, but it felt exhilarating. For a fleeting moment, I felt a flicker of that climber's grace I'd seen in those Instagram reels. Then my foot slipped, down I went, not with a dramatic plummet, but a sort of controlled slide, thanks to Sarah's expert belaying. Whoa there, Butterfingers, she called, laughing. I couldn't help but laugh too. It was ridiculous, terrifying, and strangely fun. We spent the next hour or so inching our way up progressively harder walls. Each climb was a puzzle, a test of strategy and strength. Where to place your hands, how to shift your weight, how to trust those tiny, brightly colored holds with your entire body. It was mentally exhausting, physically demanding, and surprisingly addictive. There were moments of pure frustration, where I'd get stuck halfway up, clinging to the wall like a desperate koala, my muscles trembling. There were moments of sheer panic, where I'd look down and realize how high I actually was. And there were moments of quiet triumph, when I'd finally reach the top, breathless and shaky, but filled with a sense of accomplishment I hadn't expected. One climb, in particular, stands out. It was a blue route, graded as intermediate. It looked challenging. Lots of small, crimpy holds, requiring precise footwork and a good dose of bravery. I hesitated at the bottom, looking up at the daunting wall. Maybe I'll skip this one, I mumbled, already feeling the familiar twinge of self-doubt. Don't be silly, Sarah said, giving me an encouraging nudge. You got this. So, I took a deep breath, chalked my hands, and started climbing. The first few moves were okay. Then came a section with a series of tiny holds that felt barely big enough for my fingertips. I stretched, straining to reach the next hold, my fingers aching. For a moment, I thought I was going to fall. My muscles screamed, my breath hitched in my throat. But then, something clicked. I shifted my weight, found a new foothold, and somehow, miraculously, I pulled myself up. I continued climbing, slowly, deliberately, each move a small victory. The higher I climbed, the more confident I became. The fear didn't disappear completely, but it became less overwhelming, replaced by a sense of focus, a determination to reach the top. And then, I was there. I clipped my rope to the top anchor, took a deep breath, and looked down. The ground seemed miles away. The feeling was incredible. A rush of adrenaline, a sense of pride, and a huge wave of relief. I had done it. I, the clumsy bookworm, had climbed a rock wall. Lowering myself down, I grinned at Sarah. I did it, I exclaimed, my voice slightly shaky. She grinned back. I knew you could. We spent a few more hours climbing, pushing ourselves to try harder routes, celebrating small victories, and laughing at each other's epic fails. By the time we left, my arms were jelly, my hands were raw, and I was covered in chalk dust. But I felt different. Stronger, more capable, and definitely less clumsy. You know what I mean? It's that feeling of stepping outside your comfort zone, of facing a challenge and realizing you're capable of more than you thought. It's about overcoming that little voice of self-doubt and discovering a hidden strength you didn't know you had. And, you know, maybe, just maybe, I've found a new obsession. Because, guess what? I'm already planning my next climbing trip. And this time, those toddler walls? They're so last week. I'm coming for you, Blue Roots. I'm coming for you. Okay. So, grab a cup of something warm and cozy, because this is a story. A saga, even. It's about my epic battle with video editing software. Now, I'm not exactly a tech whiz, you know? More like a enthusiastic amateur. I can usually bumble my way through things, but this was a different beast. It all started with a trip. My family and I went on this gorgeous vacation to the coast. Think crashing waves, salty air, the kind of sunsets that make you feel tiny and insignificant in the best possible way. I took tons of videos, little snippets of everything. My nephew building sandcastles with intense concentration. My mom laughing so hard her sunglasses fell off. Dolphins leaping out of the water like they were auditioning for a marine Cirque du Soleil. Precious moments, right? And I thought, wouldn't it be amazing to turn these into a little movie? A keepsake, something we could all watch and remember? Sounds simple enough, doesn't it? Oh, sweet summer child, I was so naive. So, back home, fueled by vacation vibes and creative ambition, I downloaded this fancy video editing software. It was one of the popular ones, all bells and whistles, promising to make me the next Spielberg. Famous last words, right? I opened the program, and, whoa! My screen exploded with timelines, toolbars, menus crammed with cryptic icons. It looked like the cockpit of a spaceship. My initial enthusiasm took a nosedive. It felt like I was staring at hieroglyphics. Where do you even begin? I clicked around randomly, like a monkey at a typewriter hoping to produce Shakespeare. Let me tell you, I produced nothing but chaos. I accidentally deleted a whole chunk of footage. Thank goodness for backups. Added a filter that made everyone look like they were swimming in radioactive goo. And somehow managed to set the audio to play backward. It was a disaster. A hilarious disaster, in hindsight, but a disaster nonetheless. My frustration was building. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, my shoulders getting tense. The keyboard suddenly felt very, very tempting to throw across the room. You know that feeling, right? When technology just won't cooperate. I decided to take a break. A very necessary break involving tea, chocolate, and a deep breathing exercise that probably looked more like I was hyperventilating. Okay, maybe I dramatize things a little. Refreshed but still slightly intimidated, I decided to approach this systematically. No more random clicking. I pulled up YouTube. Bless the souls of those patient tutorial makers. I found this wonderful, calm voice guiding me through the basics, importing footage, cutting clips, adding transitions. It was like a lifeline. Slowly, painstakingly slowly, I started to get it. I learned about the magic of the undo button. My new best friend discovered how to fade between scenes instead of having them abruptly jump. Even figured out how to add music without making it sound like a cheesy 80s infomercial. Small victories, my friend, small victories. But there were still moments of pure, unadulterated panic. Like the time I accidentally hit some obscure key combination and my entire project vanished. Poof. Gone. I swear my heart stopped. Turns out, it had just minimized to the taskbar. Yeah, those were a fun few seconds. Or the time I spent hours meticulously editing a beautiful sequence of my nephew building his sandcastle, only to realize I'd accidentally left the microphone on and the entire soundtrack was me narrating what he was doing in a ridiculously high-pitched voice. Oh, look, he's patting the sand. Now he's adding a little moat. Isn't he clever? Cringeworthy doesn't even begin to cover it. But you know what? Through all the frustration, the near meltdowns, and the accidental comedic gold, I kept going. Because I knew those little video clips weren't just random files, they were memories. And I wanted to preserve them, to make something beautiful out of them. And slowly, miraculously, I started to see it take shape. The chaotic jumble of clips began to resemble an actual movie. A story. Our story. I added music that swelled in just the right places, transitions that flowed smoothly, even a few cheesy title cards, because why not? Finally, after days, maybe weeks, time becomes a blur in the editing vortex. It was done. I hit play, held my breath, and watched. And you know what? It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a Hollywood masterpiece. But it was ours. It captured the laughter, the joy, the salty air, the feeling of the sun on our skin. It was imperfect, and real, and utterly precious. I watched it with my family, and the room was filled with laughter and happy sighs. My mom cried. She's a crier. My nephew pointed at himself on the screen and yelled, "That's me." And my dad, who's not exactly the most emotionally expressive person, just smiled and said, "That's really nice." High praise indeed. So, what did I learn from this whole experience? Well, first, that video editing software is a powerful, albeit slightly terrifying, beast. Second, patience is a virtue, and a necessity. Third, YouTube tutorials are a gift from the tech gods. And finally, sometimes, the most imperfect things are the most beautiful. Because they're real. They're us. And now, I'm not just an enthusiastic amateur anymore. I'm an enthusiastic amateur who can actually edit videos. Not flawlessly, mind you, but enough to capture those precious moments and turn them into something we can cherish. So, next time you see a slightly shaky, slightly over-filtered home movie, remember me. And all the accidental backward audio, radioactive goo filters, and high-pitched narrations it took to get there. It's a journey, isn't it? But so worth it. Now, who wants to see my next masterpiece? Just kidding, unless, hey everyone, learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, but remember, every step, no matter how small, takes you closer to the peak. A hesitant word is better than silent fear. Think about it. Even a slightly mispronounced word or a grammatically imperfect sentence is a victory. It shows you're trying, you're putting yourself out there, and that's incredibly brave. Each hesitant word is a stepping stone to fluency. so keep those words coming. And you know what? Here's a fun way to practice. Imagine you're a time traveler who witnessed a historical event. Picture yourself at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, or maybe watching the first airplane take off. Describe what you see, hear, and feel as if you were really there. You can do this while you're cooking dinner or even just taking a walk. It's such a simple exercise, but it gets you thinking and speaking in English in a creative and engaging way. Honestly, it felt like magic the first time I tried it. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? You're definitely not alone. Feeling lost in group conversations is a common experience. It can feel overwhelming when everyone is chatting away, and you're struggling to jump in. But remember, every single person learning a language has been there. It's part of the process, and it gets easier with practice. Believe me, you will not believe what happened next. The other day, I was at a coffee shop and overheard someone say, "Have a great day," and it just brought a smile to my face. Such a simple phrase, but so uplifting. What's a phrase in English that always makes you smile? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear what brings you joy. Okay, so, you are never going to believe this. Like, seriously, I still kind of can't believe it happened. I went to this tiny music venue last week, right? The kind of place you wouldn't even notice unless you were looking for it. Tucked away down this alley with peeling paint and overflowing dumpsters. Glamorous, I know. But it has this legendary status, you know? Like, bands that are now huge, playing stadiums and stuff. They all cut their teeth at this place. The grimy muse, they call it. Fitting, really. So, I'd been meaning to go there for ages. My friend Sarah, she's obsessed with live music, had been raving about it for months. You have to go, she'd say, practically vibrating with excitement. The energy is insane. And finally, there was a band playing that we both wanted to see. This indie folk duo called Whispering Pines. So, we made a plan. Now, I'm not usually a let's stand in a crowded, sweaty room kind of girl. Give me a comfy couch and a good book any day. But, you know, sometimes you gotta push yourself out of your comfort zone, right? So, there I was, last Thursday night, squeezed into my favorite ripped jeans and feeling apprehensive. I'd even put on some eyeliner. A big step for me. The alley itself smelled like stale beer and something vaguely floral, maybe jasmine from someone's window box? It was a strange combination. And dark, like, seriously dark. I fumbled for my phone's flashlight, tripping over a loose cobblestone. Sarah laughed, already a few steps ahead. Almost there, she called back, her voice echoing weirdly in the narrow space. And then, bam, we were there. The grimy muse. It was smaller than I expected. Like, way smaller. The doorway was this battered red door, and a single bare bulb flickered above it, casting this eerie, almost theatrical light. Music spilled out onto the street, a low thrumming bass line that vibrated through my chest. I could feel a nervous flutter in my stomach, like before a roller coaster. Inside, it was, well, imagine a sauna crossed with a flea market. It was packed, like, really packed. People were crammed shoulder to shoulder, a sea of faces bathed in this hazy red light. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, cheap beer, and, oddly enough, popcorn. Popcorn? Where was that coming from? Sarah, being the seasoned pro that she is, immediately grabbed my hand and started weaving through the crowd. "Come on," she yelled over the music, which was now getting louder, more insistent. We somehow managed to squeeze our way to a spot near the back, near the bar, which was basically a rickety table with a guy pouring drinks from a plastic cooler. Glamorous, right? The walls were plastered with band posters, layers upon layers of them, peeling and faded, a testament to the venue's history. There were strings of fairy lights draped haphazardly, some blinking, some not. The whole place felt alive, vibrating with this raw, untamed energy. It was intoxicating. The opening act was this local punk band, all ripped jeans and screaming vocals. Honestly, not really my thing, but even I had to admit, there was something captivating about their sheer, unadulterated passion. The lead singer was jumping all over the place, almost falling into the crowd a couple of times. I was genuinely worried he was going to break an ankle. After their set, which felt simultaneously like 5 minutes and 5 hours, there was a short break. I managed to snag a lukewarm beer from the cooler bar. Sarah and I leaned against the wall, catching our breath. "So," she asked, grinning, "what do you think?" "It's intense," I admitted, wiping some condensation off my beer bottle. "Not exactly what I'm used to." She laughed. "Just wait for Whispering Pines," she said. "They're amazing." And you know what? She was right. When Whispering Pines took the stage, the entire atmosphere shifted. The chaotic energy of the punk band settled into something quieter, more intimate. The two musicians, a girl with long, flowing hair and a guy with a kind smile, set up their instruments, a guitar, a cello, and a microphone. And then, they started to play. Their music, it was like magic. Honestly, the girl's voice was this ethereal whisper, weaving around the melancholy notes of the cello and the gentle strumming of the guitar. The lyrics were poetic, heartfelt, telling stories of love and loss and everything in between. I closed my eyes, letting the music wash over me. It felt like I was floating. The crowd, which had been a roiling mass just moments before, was now completely still, captivated. Everyone was swaying gently, their faces illuminated by the soft stage lights. I even saw a few people with tears in their eyes. It was that kind of music. The kind that gets right under your skin and touches your soul. And then, the funniest thing happened. Midway through one of their songs, the girl stopped playing. She looked down at her guitar and frowned. "Oh," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone. "I think I broke a string." The crowd chuckled. The guy, her bandmate, leaned over to inspect the damage. "Yep," he said, "definitely broken." Now, what happened next was totally unexpected. A guy from the crowd, a guy with bright pink hair and a ripped band t-shirt, yelled out, "I have an extra string." And then, he proceeded to climb onto the stage, rummage through his backpack, and hand the girl a new guitar string. She thanked him profusely, and he just grinned and climbed back down into the crowd. It was this spontaneous moment of community, of shared passion, that just warmed my heart. You know what I mean. The girl replaced the string, tuned her guitar, and they started playing again, picking up right where they left off. And it was even more magical than before. There was this palpable feeling of connection in the room, this sense that we were all in it together, experiencing this beautiful music in this tiny, grimy, magical place. When their set ended, the applause was deafening. I clapped until my hands were sore. I felt exhilarated, like I'd been plugged into some kind of electric current. It was unlike anything I'd experienced before. Leaving the grimy mews, back into the dark alley, the stale beer smell somehow didn't seem so bad anymore. It was part of the experience. Part of the charm. So, yeah, that was my visit to the grimy mews. It was unexpected, intense, magical, and honestly, I can't wait to go back. Maybe next time, I'll even brave the popcorn. Who knows what secrets that place holds? I'm kind of excited to find out. Okay, so, you won't believe what happened to me a few weeks ago. It all started with this bicycle, or, more accurately, a wreck of a bicycle. It had been sitting in our shed, gathering dust and cobwebs, probably since the dawn of time. Or at least since my kids were little. You know how it is. Life gets busy, things get forgotten. And this poor, neglected bike was definitely forgotten. It was a little girl's bike, a faded, pale pink with rust creeping up the chain and spokes like some kind of metal-eating ivy. One of the handlebars' grips was missing, revealing the bare, cold metal underneath. The tires were flat, practically gasping their last breaths. And the seat? Oh, the seat. Ripped and weather-beaten. It looked like it had lost a fight with a wild cat. Honestly, the thing was more sculpture than bicycle. A rusty, dusty, sad little sculpture. But then, something happened. I was sorting through the shed, trying to reclaim some semblance of order in my life, when I stumbled upon it. And, I don't know, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. I remembered my daughter, tiny and giggling, riding that bike down the street, her pigtails bouncing. Remember those training wheels? God, those training wheels were a nightmare to attach. I spent an entire afternoon wrestling with them, convinced they were designed by a sadist. Anyway, I looked at this rusty heap, and a thought, almost a compulsion, struck me. I had to fix it. Now, I'm not exactly handy. I can change a light bulb, maybe hang a picture frame, but bicycle repair? That's a whole different level of expertise. You should have seen the tools I had. A rusty screwdriver, a pair of pliers that were older than my kids, and a hammer that I'm pretty sure belonged to my grandfather. It was a pathetic sight. I started by pumping up the tires. Or at least, I tried to. The pump, surprise surprise, decided to stage a protest. It hissed and sputtered, refusing to cooperate. I wrestled with it for a good 15 minutes, getting increasingly frustrated, before finally giving up and borrowing a pump from my neighbor. He gave me this look, like, "Lady, are you serious?" But, hey, I was determined. Inflating the tires was surprisingly satisfying. They slowly regained their shape, plumping up like little rubber donuts. Small victories, right? Then came the chain. Oh, that chain. It was a tangled mess, coated in grime and rust, stubbornly refusing to move. I spent a good hour, maybe more, meticulously cleaning it link by link with an old toothbrush and some WD-40. My fingers were black, my back ached, and I think I inhaled enough WD-40 to lubricate a small car. But you know what? It was strangely therapeutic, like I was entangling not just a bicycle chain, but also the knots of my own busy life. It was just me, the bike, and the quiet hum of the afternoon. It was nice. Once the chain was clean, I oiled it, and it started moving again. Smoothly, quietly. It was a small miracle. I felt a surge of pride, a sense of accomplishment. Like I had conquered Mount Everest, or at least a very rusty bicycle chain. Next came the seat. That ripped. Sorry excuse for a seat. I didn't even try to fix it. I just ripped it off completely. A little aggressive, maybe, but it felt good. Then I went to the local bike shop and bought a shiny new one. A bright, cheerful red one. A splash of color against the fading pink. The handlebars were next. The bare metal where the grip was missing was cold and uncomfortable. I wrapped it with some colorful handlebar tape I found at the store. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Much better. And slowly, piece by piece, this rusty wreck of a bicycle started to transform. It was like watching a butterfly emerge from a chrysalis. It was still a little faded, a little scratched, but it was functional. And, dare I say, beautiful. In its own, quirky, patched-up way. Guess what happened next? I took it for a ride. Right there in my driveway. I felt a little silly, a grown woman wobbling around on a little girl's bike. But I didn't care. I pedaled up and down the driveway. The wind in my hair. What's left of it, anyway. The sun on my face. It felt freeing. It wasn't just a bike ride. It was a journey back in time. To simpler days. To days filled with the sound of giggling children and the whir of training wheels. It was a reminder of a time when the biggest problem I had was figuring out how to attach those darn training wheels. And you know, it wasn't perfect. The gears were a bit sticky, the brakes squealed like a startled cat. But it worked, it moved, and that's all that mattered. That rusty, forgotten bicycle, it became more than just a bike. It became a symbol of resilience, of second chances, of the quiet satisfaction of fixing something broken. And a reminder that sometimes, the most unexpected things can bring us the most joy. So, yeah, that's the story of the day I repaired a bicycle. It was a day of grease and grime, of aching muscles and rusty tools. But it was also a day of rediscovery. A day of remembering. A day of small triumphs and quiet joy. And honestly, I wouldn't trade it for the world. You know what I mean? Sometimes, it's the little things, the unexpected projects, that truly fill you up. Makes you appreciate the simple things, the forgotten treasures hiding in plain sight. Just like that little pink bicycle in my shed. Who knew it held so much more than just dust and cobwebs? Learning a new language, especially English, can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But you know what? The more you fail, the more you grow. Think about it. Each stumble, each hesitant word, each time you have to ask someone to repeat themselves. It's all part of the process. It's proof that you're pushing yourself, stretching your comfort zone, and getting closer to fluency. Embrace those little failures, they're actually stepping stones to success. You're doing amazing. And you know what can be a really fun way to practice? Pretending to be a tourist guide in your city. Imagine you're showing a friend around. You'd point out interesting buildings, explain the history of a local park, or recommend the best place to grab a bite. You can do this anytime, anywhere, while walking your dog, cooking dinner, or even just looking out the window. It's a simple, fun, and effortless way to get those words flowing. Wanting to speak but waiting for the right moment? Oh, I totally get that. It's like you have all these brilliant thoughts swirling around in your head, perfectly formed English sentences just waiting to burst out, but something holds you back. Maybe you're worried about making a mistake or not sounding perfect. Believe me, everyone goes through this. It's completely normal, and you're not alone. The key is to just start speaking, even if it feels a little awkward at first. You will not believe what happened to me the other day. I was trying to explain something in English, and I completely blanked on a simple word. It was so frustrating, but then I remembered my little notebook where I jot down new words and phrases. It was a lifesaver, and that got me thinking, do you keep a journal or notes to track your English progress? It can be such a helpful way to see how far you've come and celebrate all those little victories along the way. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, so, you won't believe what happened the other day. It all started with a flower pot. Sounds mundane, right? Trust me, it wasn't. It turned into this whole thing. You know those days where you just need to do something, anything, with your hands? That was me. I'd been staring at a screen for hours, my brain felt like scrambled eggs, and I suddenly had this overwhelming urge to connect with, well, Earth. Ironic, considering I live in a tiny apartment with a balcony the size of a postage stamp. So, there I was, scrolling through Pinterest, looking for inspiration, because, let's be honest, who doesn't get their life inspiration from Pinterest? And I stumbled upon these gorgeous overflowing flower pots, bursting with color, like tiny explosions of joy. I thought, I can do that. Famous last words, right? The next day, I was on a mission. Off to the garden center I went, armed with my phone full of Pinterest screenshots and a vague idea of what I wanted. Now, I'm not exactly a green thumb, you know? My usual approach to plants is to overwater them with love until they tragically drown. So, this whole flower pot extravaganza was a bit of a leap of faith. The garden center was a sensory overload. The air hung thick and humid, alive with the perfume of damp earth, blooming jasmine, and something faintly citrusy. I wandered through rows of vibrant flowers, their petals like velvet, their colors so intense they practically vibrated. I touched a fuzzy lamb's ear, the texture surprising me with its softness. There were tiny succulents, fat and happy, and these cascading petunias in the most incredible shades of purple. I was like a kid in a candy store, completely overwhelmed. Where to even begin? After much deliberation, and a slightly awkward conversation with a very knowledgeable, and slightly amused, garden center employee, I finally settled on a mix of plants. Some bright pink geraniums, because, well, classic. A few delicate white alyssum for a bit of contrast, and some trailing ivy to, you know, trail dramatically over the edge of the pot. And, of course, a giant terracotta pot, the kind that makes you feel like a proper gardener. Back home, armed with my plants, potting soil, and a trowel that I'm pretty sure belonged to my grandmother, I set up shop on my tiny balcony. I spread out some newspaper, because, let's face it, I'm a messy gardener, and got to work. Now, I'd watched a couple of YouTube tutorials on perfect potting technique, but honestly, it looked way easier on screen. The soil was, well, soil. It got everywhere, under my fingernails, in my hair, on my nose. At one point, I'm pretty sure I sneezed and blew a puff of dirt across the balcony. It wasn't exactly graceful. The first hurdle was getting the pot clean. It had this weird white residue on it, probably from its time at the garden center. I tried scrubbing it with a sponge, but it wasn't budging. Then, in a moment of brilliance, or desperation, I grabbed an old toothbrush. And you know what? It worked. Who knew toothbrushes were so versatile? I felt like a cleaning ninja. Next came the drainage layer. Broken pottery shards, apparently. I didn't have any. So, I improvised. I rummaged through my recycling bin and found a broken coffee mug. Perfect. I wrapped it in a tea towel and gave it a good whack with a hammer. It was surprisingly therapeutic. The satisfying crack echoed across the balcony. My neighbors probably thought I was having a meltdown. With the drainage sorted, I filled the pot with soil. Or, rather, tried to fill it with soil. The bag was heavier than I expected, and I ended up spilling half of it on the balcony floor. My dog, bless her heart, thought this was a fantastic new game and started rolling around in it. Sigh. Eventually, after much wrestling and a considerable amount of dirt redistribution, the pot was ready. Now came the fun part, planting. I gently eased the geraniums from their plastic containers, their roots a tangled mess. I'd never really looked at a plant's roots before. It's kind of intimate, you know? Like you're getting a glimpse into their secret underground world. I nestled them into the soil, making sure they were snug and secure. Then came the alyssum, their tiny white flowers like miniature snowflakes. And finally, the trailing ivy, its vines reaching out like inquisitive fingers. I arranged and rearranged them, stepping back every few minutes to admire my handiwork. It was starting to look good. The final touch was watering. I gently showered the plants with water, the soil darkening as it absorbed the moisture. The leaves seemed to perk up, as if sighing with contentment. I stood back, wiping the sweat and dirt from my forehead. My balcony, usually a desolate expanse of concrete, suddenly felt alive. The air smelled fresh and earthy, and the vibrant colors of the flowers seemed to glow in the afternoon sun. It wasn't perfect. The soil was still a bit uneven, and I'd probably planted the geraniums a little too close together. But it was mine. I'd created something beautiful, something living, with my own two hands. And honestly, it felt amazing. It wasn't just a flower pot. It was a tiny symbol of hope, a reminder that even in a small space, surrounded by concrete, life can flourish. Later that evening, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. The air was cool, and the flowers swayed gently in the breeze. A bee buzzed lazily around the geraniums, its tiny legs dusted with pollen. I felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet contentment that I hadn't felt in a long time. And you know what the funny thing is? It wasn't the perfectly styled Pinterest picture that brought me joy. It was the messy, imperfect, dirt under my fingernails process. The struggle with the soil, the broken coffee mug drainage, the dog rolling in the dirt. It was the imperfections that made it real, that made it mine. And that, my friend, is the story of how a simple flower pot turned into a whole lot more. So, what do you think? Not bad for a beginner, right? Maybe I do have a green thumb after all. Or maybe, just maybe, it's not about the thumb. Maybe it's just about the connection. The connection with the earth, with nature, and with that little spark of creativity that lives inside all of us. You know what I mean? Okay, so, you are never going to believe this story. It's about buying a gift for my sister, Sarah, for her 30th birthday. Sounds simple enough, right? Oh, honey, you have no idea. Sarah, she's Sarah. Incredibly particular, a walking Pinterest board of impeccable taste, and utterly impossible to shop for. See, we have this thing. A sibling rivalry, I guess, but less about fighting and more about desperately wanting the other's approval. It's ridiculous, we're grown women, but it's there, simmering beneath the surface like a forgotten pot of tea on a low flame. So, her birthday? High stakes. I started planning months in advance. Months. I filled notebooks with ideas, scoured online shops, even went so far as to subtly interrogate her friends. It was exhausting. One idea was a vintage record player, you know, those gorgeous creamy-colored ones? She loves vinyl, but then I remembered that incident with her limited edition Fleetwood Mac album and a rogue glass of red wine. Disaster. Scrap that. Then, there was the spa weekend. Picture it. Rolling hills, fluffy robes, cucumber water. Bliss, right? Wrong. Sarah's allergic to basically everything that blooms. Pollen, grass, even those fancy aromatherapy oils they use. Imagine the irony. A spa day turning into a sneezing, itchy nightmare. No, thank you. Weeks turned into days, and I was getting desperate. I wandered through department stores, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of stuff. The perfume counters with their dizzying array of scents, the jewelry displays glittering under harsh lights, the racks of clothes whispering promises of effortless chic. Nothing, absolutely nothing felt right. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the sky is the color of wet asphalt and even the pigeons look depressed, I stumbled upon this tiny antique shop tucked away down a cobbled side street. It had one of those old-fashioned bell chimes above the door, the kind that jingle merrily when you push it open. I almost didn't go in. It looked intimidating, full of dusty relics and forgotten treasures. But something drew me inside. The air inside was thick with the scent of beeswax and old paper. Sunbeams, pale and watery from the rain outside, filtered through the dusty window panes, illuminating swirling motes of dust. It felt magical, like stepping back in time. The shopkeeper, a tiny woman with a kind smile and eyes that twinkled like the antique brooches pinned to her cardigan, greeted me warmly. I wandered through the narrow aisles, trailing my fingers over velvet-lined jewelry boxes and porcelain dolls with vacant stares. And then, I saw it. Tucked away in a corner, almost hidden behind a stack of vintage postcards, was a small, wooden music box. It was nothing extravagant. Simple, really, made of dark, polished wood, inlaid with tiny mother-of-pearl flowers. I picked it up carefully. It was surprisingly heavy. I wound the key, and a delicate melody, something I vaguely recognized but couldn't quite place, filled the quiet shop. It was enchanting, hauntingly beautiful. The shopkeeper, noticing my interest, told me its story. It was 100 years old, she said, brought over from France by a young soldier returning from the war. He'd given it to his sweetheart. Romantic, right? I could almost picture it. A young couple, reunited after years of separation, the melody of the music box filling their small apartment, a symbol of their enduring love. And in that moment, I knew. This was it. This was Sarah's gift. It wasn't flashy or expensive, but it was unique. It had a story. It had soul. And, most importantly, it felt personal. Like something I could give her that wouldn't just be another thing but a little piece of history, a whisper of romance, a tangible expression of my, well, you know, my sisterly affection. Is that too sentimental? Oh, who cares? I bought the music box, carefully wrapping it in tissue paper and placing it in a small, elegant gift bag. The walk home felt different. Lighter, somehow. I was buzzing with anticipation. I couldn't wait to see Sarah's face. Her birthday dinner was at our parents' house. The whole family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the works. It was loud and chaotic, full of laughter and the clinking of glasses. When it came time for presents, Sarah, predictably, looked slightly apprehensive. She has this look she gets when she's expecting disappointment. It's a mixture of forced politeness and thinly veiled dread. You know the one? I handed her the gift bag. She peeked inside, her eyebrows raised in a questioning arch. She pulled out the music box, turning it over in her hands. Silence. Everyone was watching. My heart was pounding. Had I made a terrible mistake? Was this going to be another one of those awkward birthday gift fails that would be recounted at family gatherings for years to come? Then, she wound the key. The delicate melody filled the room, silencing the chatter. And her face, oh, her face. It softened. Her eyes, usually so guarded, filled with a warmth I hadn't seen in, well, maybe ever. A genuine, unguarded smile spread across her face. She looked up at me, her eyes shimmering. It's beautiful, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Where did you find it? I told her the story of the antique shop, the rainy afternoon, the shopkeeper's twinkling eyes. And as I spoke, I realized something. This gift wasn't just about Sarah. It was about us, about our complicated, messy, but ultimately unbreakable bond. It was a silent apology for all the petty rivalries and unspoken insecurities. It was a whispered promise of something more. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Sarah came to me. She held out the music box. Play it again, she said. We sat together on the sofa, the familiar melody filling the room, weaving its magic around us. And for the first time in a long time, we weren't competing. We weren't striving for approval. We were just sisters. Sharing a moment, a memory, a melody. And you know what? That little wooden music box, with its 100-year-old story and its delicate, haunting tune, became more than just a gift. It became a symbol of something precious. A reminder that sometimes, the most meaningful gifts aren't the flashiest or the most expensive. They're the ones that speak to the heart, the ones that whisper a language only two sisters can understand. And that, my friend, is the story of how I almost lost my mind trying to buy a birthday present for my sister. Crazy, right? But so worth it. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching and for staying with me throughout this video. It really means a lot to have you here. I hope you found it helpful. If you'd like to stay updated with new daily content focused on English speaking and listening, I'd love it if you would follow, like, subscribe, and share. You know, before we go, it made me wonder, are you planning to cook something special soon? It's always so lovely to hear what everyone is thinking about, and sharing your plans is a fantastic way to practice expressing yourself in English and connecting with others in the comments. It would be wonderful to hear what you're all cooking up. See you tomorrow, and remember to take care and keep practicing. Have a wonderful day.